it took us 20 years to know that singular, which I promoted for asthma for children and adults, now there's been psychiatric issues. People suddenly shooting themselves in the head, a child 5 to 7 years old saying, I want to kill myself, I'm worth nothing. And it's all related to singular.
And I think the fact that the American public and over 15 million people are on this drug is willing to be a test like mice, that is what's so shocking to me.
My general comment is just look at the FDA insert. I always tell people, go on your phone, type in FDA insert Ozempic, and you'll see the black box warning says T-cell cancer. So that's the thyroid, and it's in mice. So you either go with the mice study or you don't. But if you don't believe in the mice study, and there's reason to doubt, because what we're learning is these mice were developed for the lab. So they've been around generationally. They're not just, taken off the street. So what does that mean? I don't know. You have to make your own decision.
But does everyone need berberine? I guess that's where I'm kind of like, I'm getting, curious about whether or not it's that, because it's specifically around blood glucose and this hormone. I mean, it's really a hormone that these weight loss medications are. So you're giving yourself a hormone. I don't know about you, but all of us are trying to get our hormones balanced.
But there are people that have psychiatric issues. A famous story is a girl who was traveling, I think, to Madagascar, and she jumped out of a plane. Her friend was trying to get her not to, and they know it was related to this medication. So a lot of medications, the Prozacs, the Lexapros, the singular for asthma, so many of these drugs wind up that they'll have psychiatric issues.
In 2023 alone, Ozempic made over $21 billion, but obesity rates didn't drop in 2023.
What I say to people, I recommend when you're going to the doctor, whether it's a cardiologist or whomever, say, where am I getting cholesterol from? And just pause. See if the doctor can remember. If you're going to lower your cholesterol, why don't you look at the studies? And I can show you Dr. David, I think it's David Diamond, definitely Dr. Diamond. His story was he had familial hypertriglyceridemia. He said, hey, I'm a scientist. I might as well look at all the studies. He looked at almost 1,000 studies, and he said, guess who lives longest? Women with high cholesterol. And the big fat surprise is,
today we are so excited to welcome Amalya, Growth Factor, because she has so much wisdom about so many things. So today we really want to focus on, some basic things like being a mom, which is a huge thing. And what's going on with Ozempic, obesity, depression, anxiety. Well, that's actually a lot, isn't it? Amalya has been a researcher of nutrition. She is deep in the healing potential of food in a number of different areas. She has tried all kinds of different diets, everything from the ketogenic diet to the vegan diet and everything in between. And she's got results that she's going to share with us as a mom and as somebody who's really committed to healing from a number of different things that are happening. Let's just call them things. Observation without your judgment. She's also a hypnotherapist and she's a master herbalist. And we're just so excited to welcome her today and to just dive in deeply with her and talk about the state of affairs and what's going on in the world. So welcome.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's so fun to be here. And the first thing I would start with is Ozempic because it's so popular and there's different words like, I think Wegovy. I don't know. There's a lot about. There we go. It's don't even know all the word. So the most simple thing I teach clients, neighbors, friends, and I'm pretty obsessed about it, is looking at the FDA insert. So sometimes people come to me, and it's become more and more popular to come to me with this. They'll say, what do you think of Prolia? That I'm on post-cancer from breast or prostate. And I say, look at the product insert, and it's kind of difficult for people, so I help them with that. So the other day I looked up Prolia by Amgen and I said, there is a potential side effect. It's supposed to help you with bone density, but it says you can lose density in your jaw. You can have necrotizing something in your jaw. So that's terrified. So I think what doctors exactly, what they'll say is don't be terrified. It's so rare. And you say to your doctor, how rare? And they can't answer that question. Yeah, how rare? Yeah. And do you want to be that 1 or 100 or 1,000 people? So what I say to people is, why not berberine? Because I have a friend who is in Malibu, and we were together a couple years ago, and I realized she was on Prozac, which is an SSRI, a serotonin inhibitor, selective serotonin inhibitor, and I noticed she's also on metformin. So metformin is usually for diabetes, maybe it's for weight loss, I don't know. But she was on a number of medications, yet there's nothing wrong with her. She doesn't have high cholesterol, she's on the cholesterol-lowering pill. So she's on, let's say, 3 medications as a very healthy, looks like both of you, beautiful, thin, living in Malibu, and she's on all these medications. So I looked up what is metformin, didn't know what it was, and I saw, wow, you can take berberine, and I never give medical advice. And I say, listen, you can stay on your metformin and maybe there's some wonderful benefits. Doctors I listen to will say, well, metformin's great because it's made in a lab. So it's controlled, you know what it is. But for me personally, as a master herbalist, as a nutritional researcher, and as a hypnotherapist, I did a year of school for that. I say, listen, I'm not an expert. You're the expert, because I feel like today there's no science. A doctor can tell you this. Anyone can tell you anything, including me, including all of us. And we may be right, we may be wrong. So I always say, here's the information. So I say, look up berberine, maybe instead of at Ozempic. It's very expensive. There are side effects, and you have no idea the long and short-term side effects. So I'm a former Merck drug rep, and I say, you know what? It took us 20 years to know that Singular, which I promoted for asthma for children and adults, now there's been psychiatric issues. People suddenly shooting themselves in the head. A child 5 to 7 years old saying, I want to kill myself. I'm worth nothing. And it's all related to Singular.
Killing themselves in the UK from Ozempic.
Well, they're tracking it in the UK. They're probably not tracking it here.
They're not tracking it here. And I talked to a doctor here. She was like, oh, the benefits outweigh the risks. And I was like telling her all these side effects.
She's a naturopath, this doctor.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, no, the benefits outweigh the risk. I'm like, what benefits? Like, please tell me all the benefits.
Well, people are losing weight. They're reversing their cardiovascular disease. They're reversing their diabetes. And so that's the benefit. And I'm very concerned about the risks, because you were mentioning just before we went on air, the black box warning says cancer. Pretty clear. It's written there. That's a problem.
And 70% of people regain the weight after taking the drug. No, I didn't know that.
And you're a master herbalist, so I go to an herbalist, and her husband is an acupuncturist. You may know them. And he's been an acupuncturist for over 50 years. And I asked him, like, what is a long-term implication of this drug? And just from that perspective, right, through that lens, he was saying it will permanently change your endocrine system. And that's what's going to lead to the cancer, which is totally shocking and very concerning. And I think the fact that the American public, and over 15 million people are on this drug, is willing to be a test like mice, that is what's so shocking to me. And that it's being considered as a first line of defense. Now, I really want to get your take on this. I read yesterday that they've made compounding this drug illegal.
Is that it?
Yes. So I also spoke simultaneously to a friend of mine who works at Hopkins. She's a very top MD at Hopkins, and she is on the drug. And she said that insurance will only cover it if she takes the full dosage by month 3. If not, they won't cover it. And a lot of people are saying, well, I can manage Ozempic or an Ozempic-like drug if I microdose it. So that's why the compounding pharmacies have been providing, and there's been a lot of media. Mark Hyman had a doctor on who was prescribing it, feeling like it's the new drug of the future. And I wanted to know what you thought about this particular twist in the story based on your understanding of what's happening in pharma.
I don't have a lot of commentary about compounding versus, full dosing or taking it straight from the company. My general comment is just look at the FDA insert. So if you believe in the mice studies, which most meds that you're on are based on, and you open up, I always tell people, go on your phone, type in FDA insert Ozempic, and you'll see the black box warning says T-cell cancer. So that's the thyroid, and it's in mice. So you either go with the mice study or you don't. But if you don't believe in the mice study, and there's reason to doubt, because what we're learning is these mice were developed for the lab. So they've been around generationally. They're not just, taken off the street. So what does that mean? I don't know. You have to make your own decision. So really, I just say, just read the insert. And if your doctor says it's rare, just ask them how rare, because they don't really know. And are you willing to take that risk? Instead of exercise, eat right, maybe look for something, from an herbalist, a master herbalist, or something you find online, like a berberine. It is absolutely amazing. You could take 1 or 2 before or after every meal. I can tell you, for me, it helps stop my sugar cravings. I have sugar cravings if I don't eat well, because I say that I'm a carnivore, but I say almost carnivore, because if you just had brownies or cookies for me right now, I'd probably eat. So I'm not a full carnivore. I try to be, but I'm a human being, and I can't eat perfectly.
Right. Are you worried that because you're a carnivore, let's just say your blood glucose levels are already stable because you're a carnivore, like, do you worry that it's going to make you hypoglycemic? Because it happened to me a little bit. I was wearing a glucose monitor. I was taking a berberine, and then I was exercising a lot in the morning on an empty stomach. And then I was noticing I was going hypoglycemic, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know. I had no physical sensation of the hypoglycemia, and it was happening consistently. And I thought for sure, because I'm, kind of tend to gain weight easily, I thought for sure my blood sugar was going to be high. And I guess the timing of the berberine is important. So like, for example, taking it like with meals when the blood glucose is going to spike naturally, even if you're a meat eater. But I wonder if it's going too low for some people, because berberine specifically going to help with stabilizing blood sugar levels. And that's why I think people are taking it as a replacement for metformin. That's what I was doing at least, because metformin is all these longevity studies. Like it's the answer for a lot of even natural doctors. I'm not comfortable with it. It's a chemical that I put in my body. And I guess berberine is the same. It's a chemical that you're putting in your body, but at least it's natural. It's like that bark. It's from a bark from a tree, I think.
Right. I think it's many different parts of a tree. I think it could be root, bark, and it's from a Burberry tree. I forget how to say it. I think that's right. But a few different plants that it comes from. But generally what I'd say is I don't necessarily trust your glucose monitor, meaning how do you feel? How are you doing? Because we look at labs, we look at PCR tests, we look at all kinds of testing. What does it really need? Did you feel fine when your sugar was low? Are you, I feel fine. Okay, so maybe you're different from other people. Maybe that level for you is okay while you're exercising. You know what I mean? I just doubt everything. For example, the PCR test, right? It was back. I got the glucose thing. Right. So, you two look great. You're beautiful. You're active. You're thin. So what did that monitor really mean for you? Would it have been different for me? So I kind of base it on where I learned this from the PCR test, right? Kerry Mullins died in 2019 in Newport Beach. And he was saying all along, I'm trying to debate Fauci. This is before COVID. He wanted to debate Fauci. Fauci would never debate him. He said that the government, the NIAID or the NIH, whatever Fauci was affiliated with, because he's had that position or he's been in that business since 1968. So he started using the PCR test inappropriately, and Kerry Mullins wanted to debate him and other people to say, you are not using my test properly. So I don't know if you're taking a blood test or a glucose monitor or a PCR test for COVID. What does it really mean? Yeah. And what's it mean for you? And what's it really showing? So you felt fine. So maybe I would say, don't worry, right? Maybe you're okay with what you were doing that sure while you exercise. So that's my general.
But does everyone need berberine? I guess that's where I'm kind of like, I'm getting, curious about whether or not it's that, because it's specifically around blood glucose and this hormone. I mean, it's really a hormone that these weight loss medications are. So you're giving yourself a hormone. I don't know about you, but all of us are trying to get our hormones balanced. And it's never been a time where every woman I talk to, young or old, is like, oh, my hormones are a mess. My cortisol's high, I heard, or my thyroid's out of whack because of all the EMFs or all the things that are happening. And so, like, I would steer clear. It took me about 7 years after I went off birth control to really get even in balance. I mean, I think there's one thing we misunderstand in our Western medical system. There's many, but we really don't understand the endocrine. Like you said, they just want to lock it down, control it, eliminate it. If you have a thyroid issue, let's just eradicate it. Let's remove it. Let's just give you Synthroid for the rest of your life. Like, that's not a solution for me. So I get worried. Like, I go to all these really, really famous doctors, like, hey, I'm going through menopause. What do you suggest? Well, if you're not willing to take bioidentical hormones, they say, and these are the top functional medicine doctors. They charge over $600 an hour, They're like, if you're not willing to take bioidentical hormones, I can't help you. And I'm like, really? That's all you got? I don't get it. It's just blowing my mind. So Ozempic is no different. These are hormones that you have to be on for the rest of your life. It is scary that people are just like, sure, I'll take it. And they're not looking at the fact that they're eating processed food, which 70% of our children are on a processed food, ultra processed food diet. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter what you eat. Just eat less. I mean, do you agree?
I do. And I think the general thing I would say is I used to be I was very comfortable with pills and shots and procedures, pill shots and procedures. And now I doubt all of that because it's something came out and it hasn't been out for 20 to 40 years. How do you really know what it's going to do? For example, there's a drug, I wrote it down to make sure I mention it, Lariam. Now, Lariam has been out since the 1970s and it was for malaria. So typically you're told if you're traveling to another country, you should take this preventatively or bring it in case you get malaria. But there are people that have psychiatric issues. A famous story is a girl who was traveling, I think, to Madagascar, and she jumped out of a plane. Her friend was trying to get her not to, and they know it was related to this medication. So a lot of medications, the Prozacs, the Lexapros, the Singular for asthma, so many of these drugs wind up that they'll have psychiatric issues. So something even for malaria. Now, there's something that as a master herbalist, even though this is not a herb, I recommend this to everyone. And I always say recommend because I'm not a doctor. And I'll tell you, when I share this, I get so many comments, people saying, you're not a doctor. And I say, of course I'm not a doctor. I'm giving you research. I'm giving you information.
The foundation of the future is yourself and your own research. Go ahead.
I think so. I agree. Chiropractors, individuals, the DOs. I noticed that, especially during COVID, the MDs, the nurses, and the pharmacists, they were so brainwashed. They just robotically said, you must inject. And I was asking the questions, what are the long-term side effects? What if it got too hot?
That's what I want to know about Ozempic. I'm like, all these moms are taking Ozempic and young girls, and they're like, the young girls are actually getting pregnant because of Ozempic they're talking about.
What? Right.
Fine.
Oh, I would just make them ensure that.
But then I'm also hearing about birth defects with children who are being born up from Ozempic. But like, why aren't we talking about that? Why isn't that on the label, right? Like, we don't know what it's going to do to your future children. We don't know what it's going to do to you in 20 years. Like, I feel like Ozempic's the new fun. And I don't want that for the young girls, for the old women, for the new babies. I don't want that.
Right.
I'm concerned.
But you were saying that people comment all the time, you're not a doctor. And procedures are normal for people, and they think they can trust their doctors. But unfortunately, their doctors actually aren't educated in nutrition. So if their parents didn't teach them, and their schools don't teach them because home economics is now sexist, like, how are you supposed to learn? I mean, really, you and I have an interest, the three of us have an interest in nutrition. And not only nutrition, but how you use food as medicine. Because I've seen major turnarounds. Like, my mom went blind. She went on an macrobiotic diet. We gained her vision. I was in a wheelchair at age 7. And I had like horrible acne after to avoid amputation. They gave me antibiotics for an entire year intravenously. I had chronic ear infection. So I had just horrible skin, IBS, major issues. And then I was able to clean it up. But it took me like many, 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 many years of like deep dive learning. And I just think most of the population isn't interested in that. They just want an easy, quick fix. They want it to be fast, easy, and cheap. And that's what we've given up. And we've like capitalized on their demise. Like, you got big pharma and the big food. And the people are suffering. We've never been sicker, fatter, more infertile than we are today. And I'm really hopeful about the new administration in this recovery. I don't know. I don't know which balls they're going to pick up and which ones they're going to drop. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, I was curious, what's your theory on why you were in a wheelchair?
Oh, okay. So this is my theory. My mom, bless her heart, she died of severe obesity at age 59. That was on her death certificate. But she gave me a lot of milk. Like, a lot. She loved to drink milk. She loved cheese. Like, we ate a lot of dairy. And I think I had a dairy intolerance. And I had chronic ear infections, tonsils out at age 2. And I just had ear infections every month. The doctor gave me more antibiotics. And I think it decimated my gut microbiome. And then I got this little bacteria that my body couldn't fight. And they thought actually it was leukemia. So I was in the cancer ward for over 6 months with them just trying to figure out, why is her white blood cell count so high? Luckily, they found the spot that took a bone marrow biopsy. It was not leukemia. It was a very rare in the United States, osteomyelitis. So it was bone infection. So bone marrow infection, which usually they use amputation. Luckily, I still could, the antibiotics were still effective. So I think antibiotics caused my susceptibility to it. And I think they also helped me not to get amputation, which is ironic. And then thereafter, I feel like I've been doing cleanup since age 10. I've been trying to do cleanup, but I was still on antibiotics and then more drugs for the acne and IBS and all the other things. And then finally one day I said, this isn't working anymore. And then I went and I just got the education that I needed, and I haven't stopped for 30 years. And so that's my suspicion. I don't know. What do you think?
So here's my theory. I blame a lot of things on injections, which would be vaccines. And I won't get too much into it if you don't want to go there, but there's a bigger picture to it. So osteomyelitis is bone, and your myelin sheath is your spine, and itis is inflammation. Poliomyelitis is similar. Polio means gray, myelitis. Okay. So when you think about the polio vaccine, which we were trained like monkeys since 1955, my friend Judith Ferry Baker is a scientist that was part of the development of that. They also put SV40 in that. It's simian virus 40. So I think there's a possibility that you may or may not remember you were injected with something, maybe the polio shot, because children still get it today. And the polio shot, if you look at the CDC website and you look at I think it's on page 17 of the FDA insert, it actually says vaccine-induced poliomyelitis. Now, what is poliomyelitis? It depends on what camp you're in. Usually people who tell me the polio shot, and there's a reason I'm mentioning this, the polio shot saved us from polio. I usually say, have you studied more than 1 minute what polio is? The other side of the fence is researchers talk about, and Forrest Merriday is one. He was on the Brett Weinstein podcast, Dark Horse. And what he said was poliomyelitis, in your case, probably is vaccine or some chemical related, where you can be working in an industry like in the 1700s, 1800s, early 1900s, where we weren't protected as well. So sometimes it's a chemical. Something happened that caused your bone to have the myelitis. And poliomyelitis just means like brain spine matter. It means gray. So my opinion, my guess, my hypothesis is you probably were injected with something, because I think a lot of mystery diseases, multiple sclerosis, Lyme disease, all these things are related to what went in a lab and a chemical that was injected into you. I could keep going, but I'll just leave it at that for now, because I could keep going.
Oh, I'm sure. That's so interesting. I definitely got all my vaccines. I was in public school. Mom, really believed and trusted in her doctors. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to learn so much that I was able to recover my health, because it was going in a bad direction really fast. I was obese as a kid. It was a mess. And that's why I wanted to prevent Penelope from this detrimental outcome that I knew was going to happen. But actually I couldn't, even with all the degrees and my interest in helping thousands of people reverse their diseases naturally. And all the affiliations with the institutes and organizations and universities with lifestyle change programs. She was 320 pounds. 320 pounds. I mean, I know you're a mother of four. And I don't know if you had any issues with your kids with obesity or any kind of like weight issue.
Yeah, we definitely did. But is it okay if I ask your story? Okay, I'd love to know how you got there and what you did, because so many people do struggle. Even I sometimes, if I don't eat right, have a little belly. And I have my theories why we have a little belly I'll talk about later. But I'd love to learn from you.
Well, when I was 15 years old, I became a food addict, I would say. But I think I was a food addict since I was 6. At 6 years old, I became addicted to processed junk food, but I didn't know it because I was 6. And I was on Papa John's pizza. I'd eat like 6 slices at my friend's house, and I didn't know why I was like that. I didn't know why I was eating so much. I just knew that I ate more than every other kid. I always bought more than every other kid, and I just felt like the outlier. And then at home, it was only healthy food, right? Mom's a little healthy my whole life. So I do think there was a little rebellion in me that was like rebellion against her my whole life. But then I moved to California, and I was in middle school, and all the girls were, they all looked the same and everything. And I was like the only tall one in school. And I just ate until I was sick. It got to the point where I would steal money from my mom to get food. I would go to 7-Eleven and I down like a box of donuts, and I like throw the trash away, and then I throw up, and then I go back to the trash can to get more donuts. And I recall DoorDash right when Mom left the house. It was always there right before she left or right when she got back. I hid trash in the boxes outside, and she found it. And I was depressed, I was anxious, and I was fooled by the body positivity movement. It was really interesting, Mom, because you brought up earlier how your mom died because of severe obesity. And I actually remember telling somebody that in the body positivity movement. And they said, today you can't die because of obesity. That's not even a real thing. I said, what do you mean it's not a real thing? You can die from obesity. Maybe my grandmother died from. Are you telling me that my grandma didn't die from obesity when it's on her death certificate? Of the gaslight. I'm like, yeah, I totally written on the death certificate. Like, are you trying to tell me my grandpa? Like, why are you trying? Anyway, crazy. But body positivity fed all these lies to me on social media. So there was like being fat's healthy, being fat's beautiful, all to basically prop up processed foods. So processed food's good for you. So I was in therapy 3 times a week. I was in doctor's offices, and they said, you're fine. You're 320 pounds. Go eat some bread. They are so brainwashed into the old food pyramid. They told me to eat more bread. My therapists were like, there's nothing wrong with you, Penelope, but we do want to give you drugs for your anxiety, your depression, your ADHD. We want to diagnose you with ADHD, which I don't even believe in it. Whatever. They tried to diagnose with all stuff, and I'm like, look, like, Mom was the only reason why I didn't do it, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. I was brainwashed at the time into thinking that I needed the drugs. Girls at my school were self-diagnosing themselves with bipolar disorder, and they were like 12. So I'm so grateful for you, Mom, for not giving me the drugs. Thank you.
It was a rubber ride.
The drugs.
I was not going to lie.
I think I almost broke your arm every day. So I also hate her. I hated my mom. I hated her. I swear, I almost broke her hand like every day.
And my face. Remember when like you're riding on the door? I forgot to go to say goodnight, and you'd be like, okay, something's going to go here. My nose, my hand.
Rotten just sent me to like a boot camp, like a health boot camp.
Yes, ma'am.
Then I was like, okay, that's scary. I don't want to go there. But then COVID happened.
Shameless bribes. I tried it all.
But anyway, and then COVID happened, and I had to see my body every day. And I was like, wow. At the time, I couldn't go up the steps anymore. Like 320 pounds, I couldn't go up the steps. I had high triglycerides, and I was like going to get diabetes soon if I didn't do something. And I was like, then I was a little scared. I was like, wow, I can't even walk up the steps anymore. Like I can't even like get out of bed without feeling like an elephant, like it's on my back. And I looked in the mirror. I was like, okay, I don't recognize myself anymore. I've got to do something. I'm stuck in my house all day long. And I just started exercising for 1 hour a day. And I just started eating whole foods and like getting some sun. And I deleted all social media apps because body positivity on my phone literally told me it was fine to be obese. It told me it was healthy. So that's like the, little version of my story of how I did that.
And then you applied what's we now call the Step It Up method, which is smart swaps, eating whole foods, taking small steps that equal huge strides, and really finding new ways to cope with the reason why the weight came out in the first place, and looking at emotional regulation and all these different layers through education and accountability systems.
My favorite thing that I think is really important, because 60% of America is on an ultra-processed junk food diet, is that I was also on that diet. And I would take my favorite junk food order, which was like 2 double cheeseburgers. And I would go at home and make the same thing, but just make it at home out of whole ingredients. And you taught me how to do that because you are a master chef. So I just want anyone listening, you can do that. Like the power is in your hands and you can do that. But it takes effort and not being brainwashed by my phone, which told me it was fine to eat Cheerios and Oreos all day.
Well, and to break an addiction is big. I mean, you think about if you're addicted to anything like alcohol or drugs, I mean, you just leave it off the table. But with food, it's a totally different ballgame. And these ultra-processed food ingredients are putting you into addiction. They're actually shifting your physiology and your biology into addiction. And it's proven. There's thousands of studies that show that the bliss point is a thing, and that food scientists are engineering food to shift you into your bliss point so that you stay addicted to the food. And we work with women every day breaking that addiction. And it is like wrestling with demons. It is very, very serious. But once you've kicked it, you're good. And yes, it involves sugar. Yes, it involves flour. But most importantly, it involves your brain and your gut microbiome. And this gut-brain axis is real. And you know that. Hippocampal pathways atrophy after a long-term processed food diet, and you have major mental issues with and it affects your entire life.
I'm curious of both of your opinions on this. Why do you think that people because I myself, when I was obese, I wanted to kill myself when I was on the junk food diet, like just junk food. Why do you guys think that is? Because I know I'm not the only one. I've had obese friends who also wanted to like end their life. So why do you guys think that is? What is in the processed food that makes us former obese or obese people want to do that?
I think there's a lot of answers, but first I want to say how excited I am to be here. I know people use that word a lot, but what I say is, as a master herbalist, I'm not really a master herbalist, and I never will be, because I'm going to learn from people like you. I'd never heard the bliss, what'd you say, bliss factor?
Bliss point, yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but I've never heard that. That's brilliant. And then your story, what I realize, especially biblically, I understand some people are atheists and that totally makes sense. Don't believe, to believe in something invisible is wild, but I do. And so I believe in the Bible, or I call it the Torah, which means instructions. So learning from both of you, bliss point and your story, and biblically, what I realized, nobody gets away from this life easy. Everyone has a journey. So the reason you went through that, in my opinion, in my hypotheses, now look how beautiful you look how fit you look. You have a story which can inspire people. So what I say is, you can't do a TED Talk until you've been through what you've been through. You can't stand up there and do a talk or have the show just giving people advice, but now you can show pictures of who you were, and I'm learning from you. I understand what you're saying, but I really don't. The body positivity, I understand because I'm a human being. I listen to the media. Do you mind teaching us a little more about how you were brainwashed? Because young people listening, I'm learning from you too, and I need to learn that. So,
Okay, so body positivity. Well, it originated for people who didn't have limbs. Literally. It originated in people who either were born without limbs or have dysmorphed faces or body parts. And then people like, I don't have a good influencer name that's coming to mind right now, but these body positivity influencers who are 300, 500, and 600 pounds. Oprah's kind of one, isn't she? Or fatty. I have a bone to pick with Oprah. Okay. But no, I really just want Oprah to stop promoting Ozempic and start promoting natural health again. That's my truth. Okay. Body positivity has become this movement where we all encourage every single size, no matter how small or large, to eat whatever you want. We've just thrown standards out the window. There is no standard anymore. Having a standard of beauty is fat phobic. Saying that my grandmother died of severe obesity is also fat phobic. Telling somebody they should go eat whole foods is also fat phobic. And did you know that telling someone they're beautiful is also fat phobic? Because if they're skinny and they're beautiful, that's fat phobic. And if they're fat and beautiful, that's also could be seen as fat phobic. So it's like we just lost the definition of like truth. It's like you're a permissive parent. We just like can't. Yeah. So if you're fat, you can't tell the truth. So I actually just was talking to my friend about this. Well, no, you're going to get shamed for it today. If you tell someone they're fat, you're shamed. So I was like, hey, I think it's totally fine if we all say that everyone's fat. If they're fat, like fat's not a bad word. Like you can say that to anyone. And my friend was like, well, no, that's not true. Like that's insulting. I'm like, it's only insulting because you think it is. Like it's not actually insulting. When people told me I was fat, I was like, wait, you're right. Thank you. Because online, nobody told me that. Everyone told me I was beautiful.
This is the real kicker. Like, none of the professionals are now not allowed to tell their patients that they're fat. And that's what's so shocking, because obesity increases your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. We all know these metabolic issues. But telling people to lose weight is considered offensive. And some states are even implementing that their license can be pulled if they tell their patients that they're obese or that their conditions are obesity related. I mean, this has gone too far. I was totally blindsided. I'm like, what are you talking about, Penelope? Because for me, this bone and all this stuff, it's like a different world. And it doesn't mesh with my current reality. But for you, I think in your generation, it really is your reality. And there's less of a separation. I don't know. Maybe your kids had a different perspective.
Well, the way I raise my kids, I actually raised them wrong and I had a lot of regrets, but what can I do? It's in the lessons, we all have a story to teach people, and from tragedy comes triumph. So I raised my kids, giving them all their vaccines. Thank God, I think my grandchildren, when I have them, God willing, won't do that because it doesn't make sense to inject yourself with heavy metals. And then on top of that, when I was younger, and this is how we raised my kids for the most part, it was veganism. Veganism is the way to go. You should eat plants. You should basically eat like a rabbit. And so I tell my clients, my friends, neighbors, anyone willing to listen, you're not a rabbit. Why are you eating like a rabbit? Because the fruits and vegetables have oxalates, lectins, phthalates, and certain things that can damage us. And on top of that, when whoever that was, a doctor or therapist, told you to eat wheat, what they forgot about is Monsanto makes Roundup, and that's glyphosate, and that's in wheat. So it's very common. I hear people go to Israel, they go to Italy, other countries, and they say, all of a sudden I can have the bread. All of a sudden I can eat all these different foods, and I'm not having my Crohn's symptoms, my IBS symptoms. I'm not having that anxiety that food can bring to people. So my story is I was vegan. I was raising my kids. My 4 children are 18 to 23 now. Mostly vegan. I thought that meat, especially working for Merck Pharmaceuticals and cholesterol is so bad, that cholesterol wasn't a good idea. So I didn't give them a lot of meat. I remember giving them turkey sometimes. I must have given them burgers. I don't remember giving them steak. Now I tell my kids, eat as much meat as you can, eat as much red meat, because there's so much in there, including cholesterol. So the ridiculous thing about the body positivity movement, which you're both teaching me, is that if we believe what pharma, and this is AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Merck are telling us, cholesterol is really bad, you better take a pill. So then the body positivity is telling you to have a lot of cholesterol and it's okay to be fat and don't talk about it. But my opinion is not only, is it not safe to be that large? First of all, you can't move this fast. So if in an emergency situation, you can't even get out of the way, how about go up a set of stairs or two? That's a pretty good indication. I mean, we all get out of breath going upstairs, but people who have extra weight, they're hurting their spine, they're hurting their knees. There's activity at work, sick days. I mean, there's so many.
Obese women are 40% more likely to get cancer, but yet we still have obese women promoting obesity like it's a good thing. And then on top of that, 4 body positive influencers over 300 pounds, Emily, or over 200 pounds, died in 2021 from obesity. And like, no one's pushed it under the rug. No one's talking about that stuff. Like, no one is talking about it, showing it. I went to the National Association of Fat Advancement. It's a non-for-profit organization, and they have like fat tools that they like give to each other, and they have like fat phone calls, and they're like promoting morbid obesity, like not just obesity, morbid obesity. And I see this as a huge problem in our society. They're really trying to cheap fat obesity. Yeah, and that's a huge problem. Yeah, literally a huge problem. And I get it. Sorry. Tippy the redirect.
Hey, I got it after you. It's a problem of hugeness.
It is. Now, but we need a fit, healthy woman and men in our society. We can't have that if we have body positivity. So we have pyramid.
Right. So Penelope is pioneering this messaging, and I'm so proud of her for beating it down because it's not the truth. And she's had the courage to stand up to her friends who were ridiculing her for being heterosexual and for being white and for deciding to lose weight, eating healthy.
Yeah, they were feeding me junk food. They fed me Oreos. They were literally, they were all eating fried Oreos. They say, here, you want some more? I'm like, you can see I'm 320 pounds, and you're feeding me junk food. There's got to be something going on here. Something a little deeper here. I think it's jealousy. I think girls are jealous to each other, and they just want each other to fail and not succeed. So they'll just Peterism, basically.
I'm really surprised by the lack of knowledge around the women that were coming into our program and the women that I'm meeting. Like, they actually just can't get organized to get food like made. It's just really shocking. I don't know. Do you notice that in your practice with your clients? Like, are your clients just, they got to handle it when it comes to like cooking food at home or having great, because when you go out, you're pretty much risking your life. I think. Yeah, but glyphosate, saturated foods, genetically modified foods, herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, like vaccinated meat is another huge issue. We're so lucky to find a lamb farmer locally who doesn't vaccinate her lambs. But I mean, that's a big issue. So I mean, as a meat eater, how do you reconcile the vaccinated, cattle that are being slaughtered?
One simple thing that I recommend, like I said, clients, neighbors, friends, is at Trader Joe's, there's a meat by Teva. And thank God I know the person. I always make sure, I have a show on Twitter. It's called Growth Factor. I do it almost every Monday. And I'm just there to learn. I have everyone on there, anyone who has a story. And so I interviewed Elon Parente. He actually lives in Oxnard, California. And this meat gets distributed to Trader Joe's, Costco, some kosher stores, because it is done in the humane way, which is called the kosher slaughter. Now, the thing about meat is it could have the mRNA vaccines, it could have antibiotics, and it could have some other chemicals in it. And I'm always checking with him probably every quarter. Are you guys doing this? His meat is from Argentina and Uruguay. So these cows, the meat is imported. So we know that it's not in America. It's not under those regulations. And almost all steer. It's usually steer, which is the male animal. And it's slaughtered in a humane way. There's different cuts of it. And it's also, I always try to align the Bible or the Torah. Torah means instructions with what we're doing here on this earth. So if we read that book, it says insects are not kosher and pigs are not kosher. And what do you know? It always aligns with what is a fact. So what is a fact on the ground? Pigs have parasites. I can show you a picture of my friend's husband with his bicep, with his bug moving around. It looks like a worm. And I said, how do you think that happened? She said, I know it's from pork. She knew they would go to restaurants and it either wouldn't be cooked enough or something would happen. But I don't even know if you can cook the parasites out of pork. So whatever happened at Mount Sinai, call yourself a Christian, a Muslim, a Jewish person, all of our religions is based on what happened at Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, whatever that entity is, call it God, whatever, said, on land, you should eat what is a ruminant animal. Ruminant animal means split hoof and chew its cud. So that's not a pig. That's giraffe, bison, like you said, lamb, cow, deer. And those animals are considered what you are allowed to eat. Now, what flies in the air can only be certain birds and not birds of prey. So what's interesting, it aligns with what's aggressive. Think of the docile animals I just listed. A bear is not something you should eat. A tiger. So these aggressive birds and these aggressive animals, think about it. Do you really want to ingest aggressiveness? No, you want that docile, peaceful cow versus, let's say, some people might eat a bear or they might eat lobster. These things, have got the claws. They're kind of telling you not to eat it. And so from the ocean, it has to have fins and scales. So that's also the docile animal. So when you go to sushi restaurants, you might be offered eel or lobster. Those things, kind of like on this earth, it's kind of like the roaches of the sea or the snakes of, would you want to eat a snake? Would you want to eat an eel? Would you want to eat a roach? Those things are in the ocean. Call them a lobster, call them shrimp, call them whatever it is.
So what do you want? Salmon.
So salmon is fins and scales. So what if you follow the biblical way where this divine, whatever it was, this divine creator says, this is what you should eat and this is what you shouldn't eat. If you want to follow that, it completely aligns what's happening today. Like you're talking about positivity movement. There's a movement to eat insects, right? The high hours are telling us we're going to put it in your flour. And I think the EU was about to approve it. I don't think they did. So your pizza, your chips, it's going to be made from insects. Well, that biblically, we were told you cannot have insects.
I mean, what are you supposed to do? Like, people really need to prepare food in their own kitchens, but they can't seem to get themselves organized.
So most people, as you know, for the past probably 25 years, they say, well, I don't really have a sit-down meal. And even I'm guilty of that. I often am not doing a sit-down meal. Sometimes I have the habit of doing it and sometimes I don't, or I'm calling the family. Usually we're eating separately. But yeah, it's a lot harder for people. I don't know why. I think we're so busy that who has time to sit there for 30 minutes to 2 hours to make a proper meal? So yeah, I do think a lot of people struggle. And that's actually a good question. I actually don't ask my clients that question. Are you preparing your own meals? I just assume you're going to be doing that. But that's actually, I should add that to my list of questions.
Yeah. And how much percentage of your food are you making at home? And this is also for our audience. You know, if your number is 10%, if you're only making 10% of your food at home, it's a worthy aim to start increasing that and to start learning how to make food at home and where to source it. Because if you don't know where you're sourcing your food, you're really setting yourself up for failure and you're putting your health in the hands of businesses whose bottom line is in direct opposition with your health. And that is something that we all have a lot of experience with personally. I don't know, do you have a personal way that mainstream food and pharma has put your health in jeopardy?
I agree with everything you're saying. Well, you know what I do, and I'm very polite about it, and I recommend this again, friends, family, and clients. When you go to a restaurant, say, how did you cook? What oil did you use for the salmon, the beets, the salad dressing? And close, not 100%, but close to 100%, they'll say vegetable oil. Well, if you think about it, I think most of us know this by now. It's not a vegetable, it's a seed. And some people who like to challenge me will say, I don't really think that's the problem. It's other chemicals. But I say, okay, you might not be afraid of seed oils, which canola is actually rape seed, a little black seed. But how about the process? Hexane is made in the process, and there's bleaching and, deodorizing. And it goes through a process, I think, of 8 to 12 different things that if you look online, and I made a video myself, it's the company making these seed oils, and they make this bright, cheery video that says, look how healthy you are, look at the process. And you look at it, you say, I can't believe I've been doing this for probably 30 years because it explains all the chemicals and all the processes. So you might not be against seed oils. I am. It's the process because you're not squeezing it yourself. You're not squeezing that rapeseed or that grapeseed or the soy or the corn yourself. So there are people that kind of argue with me, but I say it's the process. It's not necessarily the seed.
In fact, like, arguing aside, people just try it. Try not eating oil or even any oil. Just try it for a week and see what changes you notice. And you'll be shocked at how your energy changes, how your sleep changes, how your skin changes, how your bowel movements change. You will be totally blown away. And I can only recommend, just don't believe us, just do an experiment for yourself. And if you're wondering, what do I do? Just hit us up. You can steam fry. You can do all kinds of things. And we have other healthier oils that you might want to consider. I don't know, what oils do you use?
So I question a few things that people ask me about. What do you think about avocado oil? And I'm not sure.
I don't either.
I'm not settled on that.
Me either. I don't like the way it makes me feel.
Well, okay, do you use it sometimes? There's that. The other thing is, how do you get from that fleshy avocado into an oil?
Exactly.
But an olive is very obvious. You're squeezing olive oil. Usually they say cold press, whatever.
And there's a ton of research on olive oil.
Yeah.
A ton.
So it makes sense to me. Maybe even sesame oil. There's a website, Dr. Kate, DRCATE, and she talks about the hateful eight, which is the oils we just talked about. So I just feel the science isn't settled on avocado oil. As a matter of fact, probably 2 years ago, I reached out to, I'm not going to say where or when or who the company is. I don't want to attack anyone, but I did reach out. I said, I'd like to interview. And I didn't say what I wanted. I just, here's my show. I want to interview. They never responded. So I don't know if they do interviews about how it's made, but if we can't find any videos on how is avocado oil made versus canola oil versus olive oil, that's a question for me.
For sure. Do you use coconut oil?
I definitely use coconut oil. Yeah. I'm not totally sure about that. I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So I use butter, a lot of butter. I know there are people eating butter. Ghee. Ghee, I have it in the house because I'm not used to it. I don't use it so much, but I know it's basically clarified butter. So yeah, I definitely recommend ghee, olive oil, butter. Trying to think what else.
That's pretty much what we use. Yeah, that's what we feel best on. Although there is a whole body of research, Kyle Caldwell and the China study, like they think that oil is just the the worst enemy of human health. So it's just interesting. Try it for yourself. See for yourself what works and what doesn't. I think that's the best. We, as our own physician, I think is really the most empowering and powerful thing. And if we don't take responsibility for our health, no one else is. It's not your insurance company, not your doctor, not your family, like no one else. We are the physician of the future. So we have a lot to learn from you as well. And I would love to know more about what you think about school lunches. I mean, your children all went to school.
Yes. So I have a friend, they're pretty private. I won't even say male or female. Hopefully I won't mess up. But they work in the LAUSD as a teacher, the younger grades. And I've been there to volunteer, and she has sent me pictures of all the waste. So I don't know if you know, but in California, your money goes to feed every child, whether they want the food or not. So if you do decide to volunteer to public school, if they will let you, you can take photos of all the waste. Now, is there any meat there? Not that I've seen. It's usually a muffin. There is a banana, but they don't want to, I guess the theory probably is they don't want to insult the families who truly are poor and can't afford food. Although I think that's pretty rare. If you can't afford a banana, if you can't afford a can of tuna, that's pretty rough. And I think it's rare.
Amalya, so I talked to someone who's like involved with LAUSD school lunch program. They serve over 100,000 meals a day, which is a lot of meals. 70,000 children are homeless of those 500,000 meals, meaning the only food they get is at school. And of the whatever $4 or $5 they get, I think she said 70% of it is just for like the staff and the building. Like they're at $1.75 for the actual food on the tray. I mean, it is mind blowing, like what they're required to do with so little. And Penelope was telling me, Dr. Lustig was saying that like the biggest fast food chain in the country are schools. So I would just love to see moms who are listening to like really stand up for getting ultra processed food out of your school. And if you need to fundraise to subsidize what the federal government is giving your school, like it is high time. I mean, our kids, it's 80% likely that your food addict child, like mine, is going to grow up to be an addict. I mean, I don't want that. That's extremely disempowering for a society. It's not a strong American culture by any means. I mean, it's like the American experiment has really failed that we keep going like this.
1 in 5 American kids are now obese. And I actually recently heard that it was like 1 in 4 that are maybe overweight. So I don't know if 1 in 4 is true. But I know for a fact that 1 in 5 are obese, and that's kids, that's children.
I mean, is that at school? Is it at home? I mean, is it a combination of both? I think the ultra-processed food is really the problem. That's packed full of these seed oils that we were talking about. Well, basically oils that last for a really long time on the shelf. That's good for business. I get it. I'm not against business, but I am against business when it doesn't coincide with health and better health outcomes. I mean, these companies must be shaking in their boots. I mean, change is on the horizon.
Yeah, I was really hopeful when Michelle Obama was, the first lady, because she had a food program, and I didn't see any changes. And then the Biden administration, and now, we're hopeful about the next administration. I didn't see really changes that made sense to me in the public school system. I personally would have, I know it's very expensive to do, but move more towards protein. What I basically say to people who come to me as I say, don't blame steak for what sugar did. Right? So people can say, I've got high cholesterol. My doctor put me on a cholesterol pill. And I'll say, what else are you eating? The doctor's basically blaming. And again, don't take advice from me. Listen to your doctor. But, because doctors will recommend what's safe and effective. And I think what's safe and effective personally, and do your own research, is eating meat. Red meat gives you all 20 amino acid. It gives you the DHA. I even wrote it down to make sure I said it all. So cholesterol, D3, retinol, heme iron, zinc, and carnosine, and B3. So what I want to say about that is cholesterol. What I say to people, I recommend when you're going to the doctor, whether it's a cardiologist or whomever, say, where am I getting cholesterol from? And just pause. See if the doctor can remember. So cholesterol comes from a symbiotic relationship with the vitamin D that you get from the sunshine. So you need a lot of sunshine, which also, by the way, helps you avoid glasses and for eye health. We can talk about that later. And if you don't eat the meat, if you don't have the sunshine, then maybe your body will struggle. You might have a little depression, anxiety, a little bit of a belly. So what I say is increase your meat, and then your mental health will go away. Will slowly.
The problem will go away.
It can be anxiety. It can be bipolar. It can be schizoaffective disorder. General anxiety. And that's what I had. I had similar to what you had. You were asking about why are people suicidal when they're obese. My theory would be, there's always a lot of answers, but I think you both already said it. It's the gut. So if the gut microbiome changes because of a vaccine, a pill, or a procedure, right? Because you have a procedure, you're also putting chemicals in your body and you're putting metals in your body like Celine Dion did. There are people that get stiff person syndrome because there's metals sitting in your body. Remember, they used to suture and now there's metals sitting in your mouth, maybe sitting in your uterus or your prostate, and you don't realize that your mental or medical health issues are from the metal in the body. But to get back to cholesterol, if you lower your cholesterol, what typically happens with these pills, and I'll say to people, especially people 70 and up, are you on a cholesterol lowering pill? Yes. Okay. Did you have any problems at the higher dose? Yeah. So my doctor lowered it. I said, your doctor is lowering the poison. The higher dose harmed you. So the lower dose, you're not going to notice the slow issues that you're having. So the issues typically are dementias-like symptoms, muscle pain, and some other issues. So what I say to people is, if you're going to lower your cholesterol, why don't you look at the studies? And I can show you Dr. David, I think it's David Diamond, definitely Dr. Diamond. His story was he had familial hypertriglyceridemia. He said, hey, I'm a scientist. I might as well study. Look at all the studies. He looked at almost 1,000 studies, and he said, guess who lives longest? Women with high cholesterol.
You need it for hormone production. You need it for proper hormone production. And I think that even sunscreen is blocking vitamin D absorption and assimilation. And you're right, it's a symbiotic process that we need the vitamin D for. I don't know how much time your kids are spending outside, but believe it or not, they're not spending a lot of time, enough time outside. And if we put them outside, we'd slather the sunscreen all over. We think like we're scared of the sun, but we're scared of cholesterol. I mean, it's so fascinating what media has done.
I'm really starting to hear this pattern. It's starting to really frighten me a little bit because it's like, okay, so we put these kids in a box, in a dark box for 8 hours a day from ages what? 4 to 8? Yeah, pretty much. And then we teach them only what we want them to know, not all the things that we're talking about. Like, I didn't learn any of this stuff in school. And then we feed them food that's going to slowly kill them, right? Flour, sugar, ultra processed foods till they're 18 years old. And then we say, and now go to another box, college. I don't understand.
Another box. Big Pharma and Big Food have lobbied over $300 million to keep us down. I'm sorry. It's just
I didn't even talk.
I mean natural health advocates, people who are actually challenging the mainstream belief system, like vitamin D assimilation is being blocked by sunscreen and soap, by the way, unless you're using a Castile soap, an oil-based soap. Yeah, and cholesterol is not dangerous, and you're right, sugar is. And if you look at the research and you really read it, you'll see that high levels of glucose are going to result in higher levels of triglycerides. What are you going to say, Penelope?
I was just going to say that you probably don't even have, you don't even have ADHD and ADD. Like, that wasn't a thing hundreds of years ago. It's just a new thing we decided that we all have to diagnose kids to put them on more drugs forever. Like, they're talking about how we just put, give kids and people just a little bit of drugs for the rest of their life. And we just push more on more. They don't even need that.
And I think the truth is that we got scared, when the kid's out of control, the parents are calling you, the teachers are calling you, they're causing a ruckus because they're being required to sit down and learn in a way that isn't conducive to their learning style.
Then you're feeding them sugar.
And then you're feeding them sugar. I know, but you always said your friends used to go away. I mean, we've got SSRIs, which are a huge problem in being overprescribed. These cholesterol-lowering medication, but also we've got Adderall and Ritalin that are being used, and people are getting addicted to those drugs as well. And sleep medication. So these are categories of medications that I feel are so dangerous because you get the SSRI for depression, and then you put on 40 pounds, and then you don't have any happiness in your life anymore. You lose. You can tell us more about this. And then you got, okay, well, if you put on 40 pounds, let's give you the Ozempic injection. And then you got a customer for life. Don't be susceptible to that. It's not okay. And it's up to you parents and us to really put our foot down because we're fighting against a very big machine.
Start asking questions, ask more questions, ask for doctor a lot more questions like you're saying. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get really curious about school. Now I'm thinking wait, I don't want people in these boxes, these dark boxes, eating this crap. This is terrible.
That's what I was going to mention. So there's a book that I meant to bring all my books, and I forgot them at home. But Esther van der Joy is in Ohio, and she's from, I think, Switzerland. So I read her book, and her story is from age 16 to 30-something, she was in glasses. And how did she get out of glasses? Sunshine. So she gives a really good example. And the example I'm going to give first is if you're getting older and you got a flabby arm, would your doctor or anyone tell you, you can never get rid of that flab? We know that's not true. If you eat right, if you exercise, if you do weight training, you can get rid of that flab. So that's my example that I tell clients or friends. What I learned from Esther Vanderchoy, you can fix your eyesight. I've gotten there where I've fixed it and then I get a little lazy and I go back into my glasses. But what happens is either you're young and you're in glasses, or you get to be about 48 and you start to kind of lose your eyesight and you need reading glasses. What she taught us, the proof is the Inuit from Alaska. So this tribe, the grandparents, none of them wore glasses. The parents then wore glasses a little bit, and then the children, almost 60% are in glasses. And they're looking at the water, the food, and trying to figure out what happened. And what happened was school became compulsory. So this tribe, who was outdoor like probably most kids until the probably early 1900s in America, were outside. So they were getting the proper sunlight for their eyes. And so that's why the grandparents didn't need glasses. Now, what I started doing is, I used to have gardeners. I don't right now. But once I read that book, I happened to have a project in my house with gardeners. There were probably 4 or 5 of them. And some were older, over 60, 70. And I said, do you need glasses? They said, no. I said, oh my gosh, this book must be true, because not only did she get herself out of glasses from age 16 to 30 something, but the gardeners worked outside and none of them needed glasses.
So I want to recommend that, I didn't know this, but my regular glasses that I got from my doctor have the filters on them. So I've got a UV filter, I've got a blue light filter, I've got 4 or 5 different filters. I didn't even know were on my glasses. So if you're wearing glasses, you're actually blocking this beneficial ray that you're talking about, that we've also been made afraid of UV light. We think that radiation, oxidation, that this is the end of the world, but we actually need the sunlight. Contact lenses also have this UV filter now. And so we got these two competing bodies of science, degenerative macular degeneration is apparently connected to UV radiation. And yet we know that light is good. So how do you reconcile that? If you have degenerative macular issues in your genetics, you may think that you're susceptible to it. So I just want everyone to really think about this. If the sun causes skin cancer, again, UV, fear, does the air cause lung cancer? I mean, it's something we could question. But it's even sunglasses, right? They look cool. Everyone likes to wear them, but you're actually blocking this, your eyes are so special in how they absorb and refract light. It's a really important factor. And someone said recently, I don't know if it's true, but I love the idea. She said, if you eat in the sun, you will actually eat less food. Because your body is craving electrons. It's not really craving food. It's craving the electrons that food gives you. And you're getting electrons from the sunlight. And I got to remember that. I gotta say, I was that makes so much sense to my brain. But it's a little edgy. She's an MD. And she's doing all kinds of great work with holistic, education. She's still an MD, but so anyway, I thought that was fun.
I love that, because again, that's why I say to people, I can call myself a master herbalist, but I learned from people like you. So I'm going to repeat that. I love that.
I'm so into it. It's crazy. I've been geeking out for 3 or 30 years, at least, maybe more now.
Yeah. Because we really learn from each other. For example, once I started learning, probably in the last 12 months, DMSO, which is made from pine and garlic, and you smell really bad when you use it. Some people can handle it, some can't. But when I said the word to my mom, DMSO, she said, oh, my aunt used that. So this is probably 40, 50 years ago for scleroderma. And there's so many benefits. I'll show you. I got my DMSO here. There's a few things I could show. So DMSO, I highly recommend. There's many companies that make it, and I want to find a way that we can make it ourselves, because it is from pine, it is from garlic, and it's on my cancer protocol. It's not mine, by the way. I don't want to give myself credit for anything, but so there's a cancer protocol, and I'm starting to help people, and God willing, in 5 weeks, I'll come back to you and I'll tell you. There's someone I'm not allowed to talk about. A lot of these people are very private, but it's brain and lung. They're given 6 months to live, and I'm in a group on Facebook. I'm in a group in WhatsApp. I've done my own interviews with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Boston College, and people who were told 3 weeks left to live. So that's my proof. And the protocol, some people are using chlorine dioxide. The protocol I'm using right now, it's not on there. Because if I really recommend, a call to action would be go to the universalantidote.com and watch the benefits of chlorine dioxide. Now, our government's known about it. I really blame Fauci for a lot of these things, even though I really can't blame him. I don't know who's in charge or who's doing this. But he's been in the NIAID since 1968. And then we have the Human Health and Services Department. Why Anyone who doesn't know what chlorine dioxide is, why is that? If you don't know what DMSO is, why is that? If you don't know what zeolite is, why is that? There's this ancient knowledge that our great-grandparents and grandparents know, and that's why I'd ask people like you. I'm learning from everybody. So I'll show you some.
Well, actually, it dates back to, I mean, in Europe, I mean, this dates thousands of years back. I mean, this kind of medicine was the kind of medicine that has been practiced for a long time. Natural medicine, they call it. But they've spent, hundreds of millions of dollars to silence natural healthcare professionals. They're considered quacks. They're on watch lists. They're discredited. I mean, even our families, and it's funny because like now my family is like, oh, maybe I should question that. Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, I'm really struggling. My doctors actually don't have a solution. What do I do? I mean, it's like really the last straw. They come back around. It's really interesting. All right. What are these? What do you have to, we got?
And by the way, that happened to me too. Around 2020, 2021, 2023, people just kind of faded away because they felt we were unsafe people, we're an unsafe family. Because yes, I wore the mask sometimes, the masks to be respectful. But it didn't make sense to me. And I learned this from a friend who worked for one of the labs that the FDA was hiring, or the CDC. When you were wearing your mask from 2020 to who knows till today, your eyes are exposed. Right. So you can debate whether masks work or don't. I don't think it works for such a tiny COVID or whatever you want to call it. But if your eyes are exposed, why are you wearing a mask?
Yeah, I have a puncturist actually wore glasses with his mask.
If they're going to wear goggles that completely cover the eyes, fine. Yeah. And an N95, you're fine. Maybe you have a chance. But most of us were wearing, I was at Trader Joe's during the whole, Fauci thing. And the lady says, your mask is below your nose. I didn't say anything to her. Mask, please. Yes, I had the mask, please. And I didn't say anything, but I want to say, and your eyes are exposed, but I didn't say anything because, people feel that's their little blankie, their little pacifier. So I understood that. But okay, so berberine is incredible. It's made from the I can never say it's not Burberry, but like Burberry, and I think golden seal, different plants where berberine comes from. But basically, it stabilizes your sugar. I call it nature's Ozempic. So you can inject yourself with Ozempic. That's fine. Just read the FDA insert and maybe wait 10 or 15 years to let everyone else take it first. I don't know. That's up to you. But I just recommend to people to take berberine. So study it yourself and look into it. Another thing is zeolite. Now, some people take the powder. There's a debate. Should you take the liquid like this cup? There's so many companies that make this.
You think that's helpful for heavy metal detox?
Exactly. So for heavy metals, this was discovered as volcanic rock. It's certain places in America and other places around the world.
How do you know you have heavy metals?
So you can test for it. For example, my kids just took some testing. So go to different, more naturopathic. I like the DOs, the chiropractors personally, or, master herbalists and nutritional researchers. But you can order the tests. And some of my kids are high in the mercury. Now, is it from childhood vaccines? Possibly. Is it from sugar? That's another excuse me, I meant to say sushi. So sushi is a possibility.
Right. I mean, tuna, any of the large fishes that you're eating are going to show mercury. Actually, we had a functional medicine doctor, very well known in this area, and he saw every patient that he tested for heavy metals who were fish eaters or high in period. I don't think you can avoid it.
What do they recommend?
Oh, well, he had a whole protocol. And sometimes you need even like high level chelation, IVs and things like that. But I've heard good things about zeolites. I think that's something people can access. And of course, there's a whole holistic medical community that is against any earth, any kind of like not the powder, but the drawing formula. Like they're concerned about how it, takes other things out too and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I've had great results with zeolites.
So yeah, the debate is I used the powder at first because I believe one body of knowledge or, whoever was debating it. Nano. Right. So the nano, I feel that this is better and I'm friendly. This is what I do on my show, on my Twitter and on my Rumble because YouTube knocked me off. I usually will ask people, can you give us a discount? How can we get this? So I'll present products to people by interviewing them and then say, what can you do to help us? So for example, like we were talking about Natron probiotics by Natasha, she's in Westlake Village and her product has been around 40 years. So I want to know, and I'm going to go to her office tomorrow. I want to know where is it made, who makes it, what are the stores, like we said, also with meats, because I'm going to get the lamb person from you because where's it coming from? So when I took the powder, which I at first thought was better, I actually had bleeding rectally. And some other weird things that happened down there. So I shied away from it. I did take a little too much, so that could be the problem. But I've also, when I had scopes there, just for checking, I don't really believe in the scopes so much these days, but I did have polyps. So it's possible that these metals in the powder kind of did something to the polyps and caused some bleeding. So I moved over to the spray, and I get this from Larry Cook. He's like a vaccine expert since 2013. So that's where I learned about zeolite, the chlorine dioxide. So I reached out to this company and now I'm friendly with them. It was at the Gut Microbiome Conference in Malibu. I'll invite you next time. Oh, no, she's not doing it this year. It's the year after. This is chlorine dioxide. People get really confused when I send them over to the site and it's on my Substack. I have a discount. I ask them to do growth factor. What this is you can make chlorine dioxide yourself. And I can teach you. It's so easy. So the problem is, this is what happens a lot. When you're traveling with this, it's glass. One bottle is hydrochloric acid. The other is sodium chloride. When you mix those together, you get chlorine dioxide. Now, the way I explain to people who don't understand it's pretty simple. It's like having a hyperbaric chamber in your drink. So you take the sodium chloride, you take the hydrochloric acid, put it in a little shot glass, and you put a few little drops in your water and you drink it for the day. So it fights bacteria, it fights virus, it fights certain parasites, not all of them. It fights heavy metals. I just can't remember which it fights, which it doesn't. Supposedly all of them. And as a matter of fact, it fights mold and fungus because when you're taking vaccines and other pills, you can cause a fungus problem in your body. So some people are high in fungus. So I really recommend, as a master herbalist, the word herb is there, but I recommend chlorine dioxide a lot. Again, you can make it yourself, but here's the problem. This seal, because it's hydrochloric acid, if it moves around, the rubber can pop off. I've had people call me, they're like, my rubber is inside of here. So I like Snoop better. Everything they have on their site, it's Frontier Farm or it's Snoop, is chlorine dioxide. So it's a nose spray, which can protect you. You can spray it in your eyes. They've got pet products. They've got for nail fungus. And the other thing you should know, there's a 9-minute video on my Rumble. If you go to Rumble, look up Growth Factor. I put DMSO and chlorine dioxide together. It's a 9-minute video. And here's the video. Chlorine dioxide is used when there was an anthrax outbreak in 2001. The government gassed it into the building in Washington. And then when there's flooding, like Louisiana had a big flood, we just had North Carolina, you either have to destroy the building because of the fungus and the mold, or you gas in chlorine dioxide. There are companies that gas it in kind of like they do for Trump. They might kill the mold. That's amazing. Yes, and it's amazing. So this stuff is amazing. It supposedly heals almost, and I don't want to say because I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to me, do your own research. And do not use Google. Go to Yandex, Yandex, or go to my Substack and type in Growth Factor or Amalya. You'll learn so much about chlorine dioxide. So I basically talked about everything that I put in my arsenal. There's some other herbs that you can do, like look into raspberry leaf. That's another early.
Yeah. Be careful if you're pregnant, though. And do you think that helps with weight loss? Do you find that it helps?
The chlorine dioxide?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I definitely know the berberine.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The chlorine dioxide seems to really stabilize people who are dealing with disease, because what it does is it's not that the chlorine dioxide itself is doing much, it's that it's adding oxygen into your cells.
I think it's going to help with obesity. I haven't tried it, so I can't vouch for it, but I am curious and I'm open.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Why do people get nail fungus?
That's a really good question. My husband struggles with that, and I really didn't look into why. That's a good question, and I should. But what I can tell you is this company makes it in a gel form. So I have because I didn't order him the nail stuff yet, here's what's very common when you get into this world. Your friends and family often don't listen to you. They want to listen to a doctor. They'll listen to somebody else, but they don't listen to you. So I tell people, don't be frustrated this happens to you. So I've been telling my husband for probably 2 years to use the chlorine dioxide, to do more carnivore. He's not listening. He finally said, fine, because he's doing everything he can to stop his nail fungus. So he's dipping his hand in the chlorine dioxide that I made myself, or you can also buy it on KV Labs. There's so many companies that make this. But I recommend this company because it's in a gel form. So it's a lot easier to keep gel on your finger.
Do you like it better than silver? Would you? Because a lot of people use silver for similar things.
I definitely have a silver spray. I don't know how to compare it. And I haven't studied the silver enough. I'm going to have to rely on you for that one. I have it. I bought it. I use it. I had a friend who had a rash on his anus. I don't know why, but I gave him the silver spray, the colloidal silver. He just loved it. He said it just got rid of it so fast. So I don't know a ton about it. I just keep it. Haven't recommended it yet, but
I really believe that everything starts in the gut. I think that when you have like mold overgrowth, that it used to be popular to talk about candida. There's all kinds of different ways. I think that you've had these different bacteria that are imbalanced. And we actually have been experimenting with probiotics. When we realized, we interviewed Dr. Hazen, you may know her.
Oh yeah, she's a good friend for 20 years.
And she that like 98% of the probiotics that they studied were not making it all the way.
Right.
And so we did some research looking at what we could possibly do to really optimize gut health. And so we've been doing the traditional practice of making our own yogurt. And it's pretty exciting. I'm not going to lie. It's really changing our lives. And we will tell you more about it as soon as we've, made the process a little bit more, beautiful and easy, because right now it's not. But it's like L-reuteri. I don't know if you heard of it. L-reuteri, L-gaceri, and then some other probiotics that we're building the strains. And apparently it's a great way to get the bacteria to go all the way to rehabilitate the gut microbiome, because come to find out, if you've ever taken erythromycin or an antibiotic, you have compromised the mucosal lining in your large intestine. And without the proper hydration in your gut, you will have all kinds of issues with your immune system, with fungal overgrowth, with permeability issues. And it's so delicate. So I think we're actually shooting in the dark unless we go to Dr. Hazen and ask her to do the genomic sequencing on our stool, and so on and so forth. But I'm thrilled because it's supposed to increase your oxytocin levels, right? So we're really seeing concretely that it's your gut health is directly correlated to your mood. And I am really concerned about the general state of anxiety and depression in our culture and the overuse of prescribing these antidepressants. In your practice, what have you seen, or in your life or in your family, with these kinds of drugs?
So there's two paths we can go right now. And first, I want to start, before we go to depression and anxiety, I want to talk about the probiotics. And we know the word bifidobacteria. That's a pretty common word.
Yeah. So I defer to, and you can come with me to, I'm going to go tour Natasha Treneb. She's Natron Probiotics. And people who know that name, if it sounds familiar, AM radio, who we all used to listen to a lot, and I still do when I'm driving, she had a lot of advertisements on the AM radio. And so what I say to people who are taking probiotics or making it yourself, I say, where does your probiotic come from? Where's the company? Is it sourced in China or some other country? Who's making it? How is it being processed? Natron Probiotics, I wish I brought the container, but I keep it refrigerated, so I didn't want it to get warm. Natron Probiotics is a cautionary tale. What she teaches people is, and I used to make kefir or kefir. Other countries, they say kefir or kefir, which is, how you make your bifidobacteria in some ways. I would caution anyone who's making it yourself from milk, because you're making your kefir or kefir. And I'm just going to give the example that probiotics are kind of tantamount to little human beings. So little human beings, they do this and they do that, and you can't control them. And that's what happens when you're making your own yogurt. It's so true. You don't know if you're making the good guys or the bad guy. So that's why Natasha, she's a wonderful human being, and she's basically should be retired. She's in her 70s, but instead she's trying to help the world by correcting our gut bile. And so she can teach us, and she usually has a kit how to make sure, if you're making your yogurt, that you're doing it right, because you don't know what buds you're producing. You don't know if you're doing the right thing. Is it going to cause psychiatric issues? Is it going to be beneficial? But the thing I tell people, the diet that I recommend, I call it the no wipe diet. And that means you don't need toilet paper when you move more over to carnivore. Because if you're a little messy down there, and sorry for getting graphic, you have to look at your diet. If you have gas, if you need toilet paper, something went wrong that day or the day before. So when it comes to the gut microbiome, I say, do you need toilet paper? And I'm not saying not to use toilet paper, and you might need it, because sometimes you go to a party or you go to a restaurant and you're eating something that disagreed with you. You have to figure out what that is, because if there's something wrong in the bathroom, there's something wrong. That's why I tell people I'm not a full carnivore. I call myself almost carnivore, because if I go to a party, I want to eat what I want to eat. I want to drink what I want to drink. But for the most part, look at what you're eating. And I base that, when we were talking about mental health just now, on Dr. Chris Palmer. The book is called Brain Energy. I wish I brought it.
Oh, it's a great book. If anyone wants to really learn about brain, gut access, this is a great book.
His basic story is, and again, as I say, we all come from tragedy to triumph. His mother was schizophrenic and she was homeless. He started his first day of high school homeless. And the path led him to realize the miracle, and he'd been on Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I hope he's on other shows like Russell Brand and Joe Rogan, and your show would be great, and I've tried to reach him to be on my show, is that meat is very healing. Now, I know there are people who are vegan and they get triggered when I say this, but my vegan friends, my vegan family, I typically see they'll have something wrong eventually. They don't seem to be able to live a lifetime as a vegan because they're missing, like we said, the heme iron, the cholesterol, these things that are vital. What is your brain made of? I think it's 20-30% cholesterol. Your body needs it, like we were saying. It needs the sunshine to have that symbiotic relationship with the cholesterol. So to answer your question, I feel like we have to be very careful when we're making our own probiotics. We should definitely have Natasha on your show. Come to the lab to learn with me.
Yeah, I'm so curious, because it's tricky when you're taking even a probiotic, even if it's been proven effective, are you taking the right straits? And I think the only way to really know that is to get this genetic, sequencing, but it's very expensive. And I think it's important, especially if you're suffering from, severe, what's now called SIBO, or IBS. But these are just basically terms for, like you were saying, flatulence, gas, bloating, just undigested food and general. I mean, people don't think this, but when you are anxious and depressed, a great place to go is to look at what's happening with your gut. Most people don't even realize that constipation or a very fast rate at time could be the sign that something's really wrong, because who taught you how to read your body? And maybe your mom didn't because she didn't know any better. Your doctors probably aren't going to tell you. So you really have to pay attention and you really have to start getting curious. I actually started a book that I haven't finished. Tell me in the comments below if you want me to finish this book. But it's basically like, deal with your shit.
And both figuratively and literally, because if it smells bad, if it's not coming out right, if it's,
You really need to deal with it. And kicking the can down the road, pushing it off is only going to cause more problems in the future. And I know most of the obese women who we coach are absolutely having major problems with their gut microbiome, because when you're eating a lot of ultra processed food, you're eating a lot of flour, you're eating a lot of sugar, it is helping the non-beneficial bacteria to grow and proliferate in your gut. And this is causing a whole host of issues. So I really believe that gut health, when you look at it and you deal with it head on, will help to lose weight. I know it helped me to get my health back. I didn't know half of what I know today back then, but I knew something was going on. I had chronic gas and bloating and diarrhea, and then I had to really figure it out. And so I really want to encourage you to do that. And unfortunately, your doctors aren't really going to be able to tell you. Your gastrointernist might also not know. There's a whole new field of medicine that's emerging. They even want to make the gut microbiome its own organ system, because there's so much research coming out every single day about its essential nature in human health and longevity and mental health. I think right now we're in a mental health crisis as well. And I think that's also correlated directly with obesity. I know it was for you, Penelope. I don't know if it was so much for my mom, but it is a really, really huge topic. All right, so going back to depression and anxiety, I think before we started, you had mentioned something about SSRIs and some complications that you had noticed. And I wanted to see if you wanted to talk any more about that to help educate the people who are listening. If you are on one of these medications, I don't want you to feel bad or wrong. I just want you to get informed so that you can create a plan. Oh, this is such great news. There are some medical doctors who are coming out with the concerns about how titration off of these medications is indeed dangerous. So they're petitioning for a diagnosis around the titration process so that there can be more systems supported by insurance companies and medical practices that can help people with the lifestyle changes and the complications that they might incur as a result of titrating off of these medications. Because it's easy to put you on. No problem. No. Oh, you're sad? Here you go. Getting you off? Not so easy. Their medical model is not designed to support that. So I just really want to be clear with you. Like, just know what you're getting into if you're going to get on Ozempic. Know what you're getting into if you're going to take an antidepressant. And keep in mind, there is a pathway off, but you need support. I believe you need support with the sleep medication, the Adderall, the Ritalin, the SSRIs, antidepressants, and Ozempic. And the answer is in how you're living your life, how you're sleeping, what you're drinking, what you're eating, and how much sunlight you're getting, how much exercise you're getting, like all these things. I know we know that, but like it's become a challenge for people just to get back into these things. So what words of caution can you provide, or what information can you share with us about your research into the use of these medications?
I actually made a list to make sure that I mention because what I basically tell people is, I really don't give medical advice. And I don't say, I was asked the other day, should I take Ozempic? And I didn't say no. I just said, here is the product insert. Read it yourself. Same thing with the doctor. When the doctor is pushing you into that pill, that procedure, or that vaccine, you really just read the insert. As a matter of fact, I had an acquaintance the other day tell me the doctor wanted to give the daughter the Merck. I used to work for Merck. Gardasil HPV shot. And the mother said, I will give my daughter the shot if you can tell me the ingredients. And the doctor, supposedly, this is what she told me, the doctor looked at the daughter and said, your mother is stupid. And most likely it's because that doctor didn't have the answer. And, when I worked for Merck Pharmaceuticals, when I would wait for the doctor, I would read the product insert so I knew what I was talking about. Did such a good job at it that when we would launch new drugs, there would be a competition to win prizes, and I would win because I read the product insert. So even the drug recs are not reading the insert, the doctors are not reading the insert, and most likely that doctor called the mother stupid to the daughter because the doctor couldn't say the ingredients. And if doctor, you can't say the ingredients, that's a problem. So when we're talking about mental health, to go back to Dr. Chris Palmer, the book is called Brain Energy. What he started realizing, and this goes along with Dr. Sean Baker, who wrote the book Carnivore, and I also meant to bring that book too because I learned a lot from that, and Nina Teicholz as well, who wrote a book called The Big Fat Surprise. And the big fat surprise is, which you both have already said, from the 60s, 70s, and maybe a little into the 80s, if you look at old pictures of anything, a beach scene, everybody's thin. Nobody has a little belly. They don't even have a little belly. Okay, there's the occasional fat person, sorry, am I not allowed to say that? No. I'm not saying, oh no, they're going to come after me, the positivity people.
These splash people, let's feel it. Yeah, I guess true positivity is health.
So even we struggle a bit with the belly. And why is that? If I go to a restaurant, they have the cereals. But to go back to Brain Energy, he hasn't said this, but I say don't blame the steak for what sugar did. But Dr. Chris Palmer says they are helping to heal bipolar, anxiety, schizoaffected using meat. Now, because of keto, I personally move over to carnivore because I also mix with a professor, Dr. Don Layman says. He's University of Illinois. And there's a few other physicians who personally have issues like their own erectile dysfunction, eczema, and some other issues like precancers. They will move over to meat. And if they're going to have vegetables, they'll typically ferment them. Because again, I go back to when I say to clients, you're not a rabbit. Why are you eating that? So what I learned from Professor Don Layman, again, University of Illinois, he says, let's say you both just had steak and I had a salad. Well, very typically that carrot or that Brussels sprout or that spinach, a lot of that fiber is pulling the nutrients out of your body. So you can tell me I got this much vitamin A, D, C, whatever it is, but I just had the salad. So a lot of it's coming out in the bathroom. I'm probably going to have gas. I'm probably going to need toilet paper. You just had a steak. So your body is absorbing most of it. So what I caution my clients, I say, you're going to think you're constipated because you're not used to eating the way this works. And how this works is you're getting most of the nutrients, so not a lot's coming out of the bathroom. So you're going to tell me you're constipated and you're not constipated because your body's using it and you're not used to that. You're used to the more vegan, vegetarian, fat makes you fat, meat is unhealthy, cholesterol is bad. So you're probably shying away from meat. A lot of people say, I don't eat meat. I don't eat too much meat. I eat the lean chicken. And I say, eat the full fat because it benefits you in the bathroom. It benefits you mentally. To go back to Dr. Chris Palmer, their studies based out of Harvard, they're healing a lot of these mental health disorders using food. So you have two choices. You can go on the Zoloft, the Prozac, the Lexapro, the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? So it means that it inhibits your reuptake of those chemicals, or you can eat the food that will heal you. And you can find sources, anywhere that you can find a farmer, probably that's in your town, look it up because a lot of people don't even know these local sources. Or like I said, at Trader Joe's, it's called Teva. That's from Uruguay.
We have resources. Hit us up if you're curious. Find Amalya. Definitely, you don't know where to get these foods. Definitely hit us up. I had a client who was struggling with schizophrenia. And I was doing some research because I thought, it's just like, I know she's on sleep medication, but is it because of sleep meds? And yes, there's a lot of actually information that when you are on sleep medication, like Ambien, that it could and most likely will over a long term cause schizophrenia, which is concerning, very concerning. That doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. Don't take my advice, like you say, Amaya. Do your own research. But then I found this book from like 1943, I think it was, and it was Orthomolecular Nutrition to Cure Schizophrenia. Yeah, and it was actually co-authored by Hawkins, who did the map of consciousness and power versus force and all these. He's a psychiatrist, and has done he did a lot of revolutionary thinking and research around how to reverse mental disorders. And I didn't know nutrition was part of it until I saw this book. It's out of print, but there's definitely a long history of documented medical doctors and psychiatrists, who are proving what you're saying, that nutrition really matters. And there's this huge gap in our medical system where medical doctors are not educated on how to use nutrition. These are ancient healing traditions that have existed for centuries in every culture throughout time. And it just happens that in the United States of America, we have a gap in the doctor's education. They get a semester, if I'm not mistaken. And it's only if they have a personal interest, do they get additional education on nutrition's influence on disease. Now, we are not what we eat, we are what we absorb, as you alluded to. And so this is also important. Another reason why we have to deal with the gut microbiome in order to be able to really even get the nutrients. And then there's this whole other field, it's like a minefield of nutrient density. And I think one of the issues we're having with vegetables and fruits is that the soil is so depleted, it's literally raped, that I'm not allowed to say that on YouTube. We have to delete that out. The soil is so depleted that the food doesn't actually have the nutrients that we need. And so fiber aside, the phytonutrients are not intact like they once were 100 years ago.
So you mentioned Ambien and you mentioned food density, and that's why I really recommend more of a carnivore diet than a vegan diet. I do think veganism and then mixed with a little junk food can really do what you were talking about, that you can have psychiatric issues. I had that around 2019. And when I look back, this is where I go back to be your own detective. Don't necessarily listen to us or your doctor. You have to be your own detective. When I look back, most of my life, I had anxiety. I had trouble, falling asleep. I was nervous. I had to wake up early for high school and middle school. So be your own detective and look back. If you took a pill, a shot, a vaccine, a procedure, that could be the cause, like when you were young. I'll bet you anything it's something they gave you in your mouth or injected in your body, because I say to people, you're not a defect. Something happened to you and it's not your fault. So when it comes to the Ambien, I have two stories. Carrie Kennedy, I believe she's the sister of RFK, because there's a lot of relatives. I don't know if it's the cousin or the sister, but it's well known that she went to court and she was released. She was not convicted because she was driving erratically on the freeway. Turns out she took Ambien. And I have my own personal experience. My brother-in-law taught me Ambien's very dangerous. He said he would take it on the plane when he would do international travel for work. And he said he would drive, he would make food, he would have conversations, and he wouldn't remember the next day.
Whoa.
So Ambien is well known to cause these psychiatric issues. Now I'm going to talk about a few things, and this is just to give you a bigger picture that anything that happened to you from birth to today, look at what was injected into you or put in your mouth. So for example, I launched Singular. And what happens is, as a drug rep, as a Merck drug rep, we think it's the greatest thing. We're taught they did the clinical trials. It's going to be the greatest thing. It's going to be used off-label for this and that. So they'd always hint to us, tell the doctor it's for asthma, but it's also going to be used for this, that, and the other. Turns out there were some young children that tried suicide, talked about suicide from Singular. And what happens is the doctor will go into denial and say, no, it's your kid is not sleeping well or not eating well, until hundreds of kids this happened to. And then there's a black box warning. Now, the problem with pharma, they don't call the doctor and they don't write a letter. What it happens is eventually, hopefully, God willing, they'll put it in the FDA insert. I think it's usually section 6.1 or 6.2. And it'll say post-marketing experience. So it's what are adults or parents reporting. So in other words, I'm going to ask you right now, why are you taking that vaccine, that pill, or even that procedure that hasn't been around for 20 to 30 years? Because if you don't have 20 or 30 years of data, you are part of the experiment. And that's what happened in 2020. You were part of a worldwide experience. And I want to tell people who feel guilty about choices they might have made in 2020, whether it's the vaccine or the mask, you did nothing wrong. I don't like that they try to separate us. You wouldn't wear a mask, you wouldn't take the vaccine, or you did and you're stupid. No, you're not. You were trained since the 1950s to take the polio sugar cube. Eventually, it was punch. It was called polio punch in Nebraska in 1962. The sugar cubes were like 1955, 1958. Like I said, my friend Judith Ferry Baker was part of that. You should really look her up on YouTube. And what happened was they were training us like monkeys to take this for polio, take this, before that for smallpox. And eventually it became give your baby the vitamin K shot at birth and give them the hepatitis B shot. So I will ask you all right now to go on your phone and type in vitamin K vaccine or FDA insert, and then do hepatitis B. You're going to see words like death. You're going to see words like gasping syndrome. Does that sound like SIDS, sudden infant death? So they say 70 or 80% of babies that just don't wake up had just been to the pediatric office for a well baby visit, which means they were injected with something. So now you're wondering why they have asthma, why they have gut issues, why do they have weight issues? Oh, I'm inflamed and I can't lose weight. I say it's not your fault. We were little monkeys who injected our children. I injected my children. They got all their shots. And what happens is they can have problems feeding, problems speaking, speech impediments. They can have problems growing. So I just tell people, I don't blame you, but I want to go over the list. So Propecia, that's a well-known, at first it was for prostate. It was a Merck drug. People eventually started using it for hair loss because it does stop hair loss in men and grown hair. But there are some issues that can happen sexually. Now, again, going to the SS, like impotence. Yeah, stuff like that. Like the Zoloft, the Lexapro that happened to me, you can have anorgasmia, which means you don't have sexual pleasure. And that can be permanent or you can slowly come back to something. But a lot of these drugs are semi-permanent. So do you want to live the rest of your life? If you feel nervous or depressed or even you're shy at parties and you want to go on Lexapro or Prozac or Zoloft, but you can have anorgasmia, which means you're not going to have pleasure. That's what can happen. I don't know what the percentage is, but all my friends that I know, we didn't know what was happening. My friend would just say sexually, I get done. I don't know what she meant by get done. Like she's just done. It's not pleasure for her. I didn't realize. So that's what I recommend to clients. Be your own detective. Look back, because when I was vaccinating my children, I didn't realize my son got Bell's palsy after the meningitis shot. I called 911 on that one 2 times for gasping syndrome. He had just been to the pediatric office, so I didn't know what I was doing. So there's a few other things. Oh, one thing we got to talk about. You should follow Dr. Mark Galili. He should really be on your show. Do you know that name? He's on Instagram. He has a lot of followers. I'm encouraging him to be on X because the reason you should really go to X is YouTube censors me. I got kicked off LinkedIn. I got kicked off Facebook.
So I got canceled too for talking about diabetes type 2 reversal.
Oh, there you go. And TikTok took me off for a doctor talking about parasites. I was kicked off YouTube for Dr. Hazan video on bifidobacteria.
Come on. Yeah, we went silence.
We had a flip with Hazan, and all of it got shadow banned. Or hire our account and shadow your account about Ozempic. Do you know that Big Pharma and Big Food have lobbied over $300 million to silence natural health advocates? $300 million.
And she's actually an MD, and she's a researcher who's reputable. It's like
she's done over 600 clinical trials.
Like she's not, and it just blows my mind. Anyway, I'm hoping that the ship is going to get turned around. I'm very hopeful. We haven't seen yet, if it's true, but I'm very hopeful.
We don't want you guys to be lab rats. I think that's what we're all getting here today. Like, we don't want you to be a lab rat. In 2023 alone, Ozempic made over $21 billion, but obesity rates didn't drop in 2023. So I think you guys should really think about that. Also, where Novo Nordisk was made, like they're
in Denmark, yeah.
In Denmark, they don't recommend Ozempic for any of their citizens. None. So that was beginning something.
It's like Amaya saying it. It hasn't been out for 20 years or more. Just don't take it because you are a lab rat. I mean, just like, but they are saying that this classification of drugs has been around for over 20 years, but it's been studied specifically for diabetes type 2. And some people are saying that they think that the Ozempic injections are the new eating disorder. And I'm, genuinely very concerned about it. I don't want to be putting Gila monster venom into my body or hormones extracted from, a kind of snake or lizard that's going to hijack my endocrine system and cause blindness, a myriad suicidal ideations, thyroid cancer, pancreatitis, slowed gut motility, paralysis of the large intestine. I mean, these are serious things, folks. very, very serious. All for what? So you've got hair, but no heart on. You've got a happier heart, but you can't have sexual pleasure. You've got a thinner body, but you've got sagging skin and a whole host of other illnesses that are awaiting you. I mean, when your lifespan is cut short by being obese, I get it. It's scary. But your lifespan might be a miserable life if you have some of these symptoms or when you have some of these symptoms.
And a lot of these people have friends, like friends and family members that are doing all these things and say, oh, well, I feel better, I look better, or I'm healthier. Come on, you should just do it with me. And I want to encourage you to be the one who says, no, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be a skeptic. I'm going to be a journalist for myself. I'm going to look into things because I know it's hard to go out there and be the only one who isn't doing Ozempic or isn't doing that drug or isn't taking that thing. Or it's hard. You lose friends, you lose family, but you can do it. You can be your own scientist. You can be your own discoverer, and you should be, because we don't want you guys to be lab rats. And I really recommend being your own detective, like I said. Based on what you just said is so apropos because pharma has billions of dollars. So I always say be your own detective. Try to think a few steps ahead of them. They're using that billion to pay influencers, to write articles, to control Google, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So I already said this before, I really recommend going to Yandex, finding some alternative ways of researching, even Substack, even Twitter. I really like X because it's not Twitter anymore, it's X, because I am not censored there. So when I mentioned Dr. Marco Lili, which I highly recommend him also being on your show, he helps people that have taken Cipro. It's in the class of drugs of fluoroquinolones. I think the ingredient is called fluoride. I can't remember exactly, but you'll see people in wheelchairs having psychiatric issues. And when I say be your own detective, not only realize pharma is against you, because only in the United States and New Zealand are they allowed to advertise to us, be in a magazine, pay a late night talk show host, pay Fox, BBC, and CNN. Other countries don't allow that. So you have to realize they're paying to influence your mind. So when you talk about the Ozempic being the new eating disorder, we've seen on Instagram young girls who take it to get even thinner because of the eating disorder, and now they have problems. On TikTok, you have weight loss influencers now, or people who used to be morbidly obese who call themselves weight loss. They don't know anything about weight loss. Some even know anything about health. They just know Ozempic. And they don't know anything about Ozempic. They think they do. They go live on TikTok, and they have discount codes for the Ozempic injections and shots, and they have affiliate links. So all should be it should be illegal, and we don't even know these are field drugs. Like, we don't even know if they're the real Ozempic because they're actually selling fake off the market Ozempic in pills, in liquid form, and you can do that on TikTok.
And they're like shooting up together, right?
Shooting is together. They're glorifying live stream, and they're like, oh my gosh, look, I lost 43 pounds. And guess what they're eating? Crap. They're eating junk fries crap.
If your gut motility is compromised, and if you're not hungry and you're eating a tiny bit because you're on one of these medications, I mean, those nutrients need to count. So whatever you're eating has got to be a super high quality, but I'm not even sure you're absorbing those nutrients because of the compromised gut, microbiome. I mean, this is a really big mess that we are heading into. I mean, it's a disaster, actually. I thought it was worse. I mean, bad, but now I think it's much worse where we're going.
But we're going to go somewhere good. I have faith. I have hope in God. I trust God. I know that God has our backs always, and things are going to go in the right direction. I do believe that.
Speaking of the right direction, another thing I recommend for people, again, do your own research or refer them to me, but cancer. We know that cancer is on the rise. I don't want to mention why right now, but I definitely have my reason, and my friends who are having cancer in the last 2 years, there's definitely a reason, and you can look up SV40 and Judith Ferry Baker to figure out what that is. But what I recommend, and I did not develop this cancer protocol. So when I say we're a team of people. We're on Facebook. We're on WhatsApp. I've got a Substack about this, and I'm going to redo my Substack. I can send it to you. So anybody with cancer, it's also related, like you said, to macular degeneration, diabetes too. There's other issues, MS, lupus. There's autoimmune, and there's cancer. It's all pretty much related. So what I came up with this cancer protocol from friends, from people I know, and it started from Joe Tippins. A lot of people know that name. His story was that he had small cell lung cancer. He's got a website. There's a video where he was in the news. I share it a lot. And basically, he was friendly with a veterinarian who said, why didn't you try this antiparasitic? So I'm going to tell you a story. As a Merck drug rep, we used to brag that we bring ivermectin free to third world countries to stop river blindness. What happens is when you're in a dirty country with a dirty river, dirty water, these bugs, parasites get into your body and you can go blind because that parasite is in your eye. So we would brag as a Merck representative to doctors, we're such a good company. We're so, empathetic and altruistic that we bring ivermectin to third world countries. So what happened was When COVID came around, you can't have emergency use authorized if you have something that can potentially help with COVID. So that's why they were blocking hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. So the gastroenterologist doctor that you're talking about, when she mentioned the okay. When you talk about these gastroenterologists mentioning hydroxychloroquine potentially could damage the gut and bifidobacteria, but ivermectin does not. It's a fermented product, and that doctor you mentioned really talks about it. And I was in her study, by the way, Vovid, when she was taking your fecal matter, because I didn't get COVID for quite a while, and I'm O positive blood. So that could be the reason. But so I just want to mention some things that are on the cancer protocol, and I can send it to you or find it on my Substack Growth Factor. It is ivermectin. That's made by Merck. We are not, all of us up here, we are not anti-pharma. We are for the right pharma that's been around for 20 to 50 years. For example, when I was in the school, Trinity Natural Medicine, because of Dr. Robert Scott Bell, he should also be on your show. He's a great guy. What they taught us was we were watching Paul Stamets. Now, Paul Stamets has had his own TED Talk. He's been on Joe Rogan, and he tells the story of his 85-year-old mother who had breast cancer, and she never went to a doctor. It entered her sternum. And so what did she take? Again, because he's family and he's a mycologist, a mushroom specialist, she didn't listen to him, but she listened to her doctor. And the doctor said, you're basically hopeless. You have 2 or 3 months to live. It's entered your sternum, this breast cancer. But we also have this study on turkey tail mushroom. Now, here's the son who already knows this that she's not listening to. And the doctor says we're doing a study. So the turkey tail mushroom mixed with pharma, Herceptin, is what saved her life. So this is mixing natural, what God offered us, with pharma, because pharma is also from God, right? People make this stuff. People discover this stuff, just like metformin might be good, but berberine might be equal to it. So I just want to let you know on the cancer protocol is berberine, is ivermectin, is albendazole. And you can see my interview on Rumble with Dr. Thomas Seyfried and Kevin Hennings, who was given 3 weeks to live. And so a lot of these people are following what Joe Tippin did, but I just want to make sure a couple of things. This is what I say. When I run to people, if they're close enough to me and they suddenly have this cancer diagnosis, I already have the products on hand because you're frightened. You're told you're going to die. Well, yeah, you're going to die in 3 to 15 months, especially the glioblastoma multiforme. I've interviewed Pablo Kelly, who recently died because of the surgery. He had a bleeding out or something. Now, this Andrew, I forgot his last name, and Pablo Kelly, they both had brain cancer. They both fought it with the carnivore diet. What that means to me is they cut out all sugar. Right. So what we say to people, again, do your own research. I'm not a doctor, but what we say is if you can cut out the food that sugar needs, what is that cancer needs? Cancer needs glucose, which is sugar, and needs the amino acid glutamine. So if you listen to my interview with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, I did one by myself. I did one with this patient who was supposed to die in 3 weeks. He did do chemo for 3 years. So we say, chemo and radiation, the gamma knife, might extend your life long enough or completely save your life potentially. But if you can add these other things, it increases your immune system. It can avoid tumors.
That's the point. I mean, all these things you're talking about, right? The MS, the ALS, the cancer, the autoimmune issues, like this all about the dysfunction of the immune system. And so one of the things I've been obsessing about for hopefully over 20 years is how you rehabilitate your immune system. And it's multifaceted. The gut has a huge role to play in it. And your protocol sounds like it's really effective. And I think it's really important that people who are confronted with the reality of a cancer diagnosis, it is life-changing. And it's really important to get informed to the best of your ability. And I know it can be scary. I have family members who have cancer diagnoses and it's changed their life forever. But there is a lot of information out there that is being suppressed. So it's extremely important that you try to tune into what is true and what is going to be effective, because some protocols work for all cancers, some work for some cancers. And the lens you're looking at through reminds me of this, looking at cancer through a metabolic syndrome, which not all doctors agree is true. I think it's true. And I've looked at the research on looking at cancer through the lens of metabolic syndrome. And you can interrupt the ATP cycle where glucose enters to starve the cancer cell to death. It works for a lot of cancers. In fact, the detox ramifications were more of a concern in these research studies. Like how the body's getting rid of the cancer so rapidly. Now, sometimes the detox reaction, is something that you have to learn how to manage, and definitely, find trusted providers who can inform you. And there are risks to everything. So definitely don't believe us. Just do your own research. Do your own research. It's really important. And, you know, the quality of your life, I just want to emphasize this again, the quality of your life matters perhaps even more. You know, your long-term thinking, like we don't think long-term like Europeans do. We lived in Europe for 10 years and Penelope was born over there. And it's a really different food system. It's a different mindset. It's just so different how they, I mean, like when she had le varicelle, that was chickenpox, they were like, oh, you should have a party. Like, you should expose the entire community. Like, this is great. Look at this full-blown chickenpox that she has. You know, we got back from India. You had, like, chickenpox everywhere. It was really intense. But that's not anything I think a United States-based, position is going to say. But that just shows, and apparently natural immunity is now being favored. This is a recent news report that we heard just a few days ago. They're acknowledging that natural immunity is a positive thing, is a good thing. And I just wonder what Ozempic is doing to your immune system. And I would really love for some studies to start revealing to us what's happening. And when you're obese for long periods of time, we know your immune system is compromised. When you're taking a lot of these drugs, your immune system is compromised. And Dr. Hazen's doing a lot of really valuable work showcasing that. So it's really like, what gambles are you willing to make? Like sometimes I like to speed on the highway. Right? I know that's kind of like not the goal. Right. Sometimes I like to have a food that, that isn't necessarily the best food. Right. We're all gambling. We're all negotiating. But there's got to be some lines that you decide, I'm not negotiating on this anymore. I'm going to stop living the sedentary life. I'm going to force myself to go outside, even though sitting in the sun is uncomfortable. Whatever it is, so people are really into bugs, right? Or I want exercise because I want my hair to look nice. Whatever it is, like, come on. Let's get over it already. Like, have some courage and start to activate things are true deep inside of you. Because I think we all know what the truth is. We feel it. And if you feel like you've gone really far away from knowing that truth, I would encourage you to spend more time outside. Eat more whole foods. Stop watching your screen. Just start making some small changes that are going to add up to be like life-changing. So my goodness, I feel like we could talk all day.
No. We should talk about the varicelle. Do you want to do that by a minute?
Sure.
So something everyone should know, it's on the CDC website. When you talk about the varicella, it's probably varicella. If you look at the CDC website, and it's a known thing that you just use vitamin A when kids are getting the measles, mumps, rubella. And it's very poignant because we're all scared about this outbreak that happened in Florida a year ago and Texas that's happening recently. I recommend, in closing, that you go on your cell phone right now or your laptop and you type in MMA FDA product insert. Don't look at Merck because they took something out. Look at the GSK brand. And when you do that, understand we're talking about COVID, shingles, the chickenpox shot. All of these shots are very similar. Look at section 6.1, 6.2, 5.6, and 3. What 5.6 says, again, not in the Merck drug, it says this shot, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, sheds and spreads the disease. So when you're having an outbreak, very likely it's from that child that just got that shot, okay? And you should look at 6.1 and 6.2. The side effects are exactly what just got injected to you. The side effects are measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, I think herpes, Guillain-Barré, which is paralysis, which means you could possibly die and you're definitely paralyzed. So when you're mentioning the varicella, I just really recommend that the biggest thing you can learn is trust yourself, be your own detective, understand pharma is against you, even though it's sometimes helpful, that what you're reading sometimes comes directly from pharma to encourage you to do something. And I encourage you to read that FDA insert and come to me if you need help reading it.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, in Penelope, actually, they don't even give the measles vaccine. They don't even get it because they know that if you get chickenpox as an adult, it could be deadly. So they want you to have a full expression, not a suppression of the disease. So it's just a different mindset. And we really need to learn from our ancestors. And so that's so great that you're a master herbalist because, our pharma actually is very narrow. It's very small in comparison to Chinese pharma, there's a word that I'm trying to think of as an ethnopharmacologist, actually. So a friend of mine he brought actually Tulsi to the West. And you're really studying the benefits of herbs is just such an empowering and mind-blowing process. So I'm excited to learn more from you as you start to uncover these protocols for a number of different things because autoimmune and cancer is really, really running rampant right now. I think people just feel really hopeless. So I hope this interview has enlightened you and given you some hope in some areas, that it's brought light into maybe your mind. Maybe you want to take some different actions today. We welcome your questions. We welcome your comments, even if that you disagree with us. We welcome it all. And in the show notes, you'll see all the links to Amalya's show on Rumble, her show on X, and everything else that you want us to have. And reach out to her, reach out to us, and we just thank you so much. If you've made it with us all the way to the end, we thank you. And we notice that a lot of you are watching and not subscribing. So we really want to encourage you to subscribe. It means a lot to us, and we'd love to be afforded the opportunity to stay here and give you guys free content every day of the week. And we love you, and we'll see you all the time.
Thank you.